We're joined on the line right now by another very special guest, Frank Gaffney. He's the president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Daily.
Always happy to do it. Thank you, man.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to start with is I know you were one of the more than 100 conservative leaders who signed a letter calling for to draft Jim Jordan, the founding chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, to run for Speaker of the House. This is obviously getting a lot of attention out there. There have been a number of House members who have endorsed Jordan for Speaker. Congressman Matt Gaetz just did last night on Sean Hannity's program, and he's going to join us later in the show. Can you tell us why we think that Jim Jordan should run for Speaker?
Well, two reasons, for me at least, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
One is that I believe the opportunity for there to be a Republican Speaker of the House is what's in play at the moment. This won't be decided whenever Paul Ryan leaves office, particularly if it's after the election, as he seems to be inclined to do. It'll be decided by that election. And I think the only chance that's going to happen is if the Republican base, particularly the base that elected Donald Trump, turns out in force. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, there's not much reason for them to do so under present circumstances. You talk about these problems with the Republican leadership and Congress more generally almost every day, and rightly so. So having somebody like Jim Jordan, who I think could run on a platform that would be invigorating, both for the congressional Republican caucus and for the base, is absolutely essential. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I think there are just qualities of Jim Jordan that are clearly needed at this time. He's been a leader. He has been particularly engaged in advancing conservative ideas and principles and values, notably in founding most recently the House Freedom Caucus, which is the best thing that's happened to that body in a long time, as far as I'm concerned. And the times require such leadership, not more of the same, or arguably perhaps even worse, by simply promoting from other parts of the existing congressional leadership, Kevin McCarthy or even Steve Scalise.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that we should have this debate and election now, or should we wait till November? I know Paul Ryan wants to wait till after the elections, but I mean, I don't see the reason why we should just stick around with a lame duck all year. Why don't we give people something to fight for?
Well, I think it's absolutely essential that there be a change now. And the reason for that is there are, 5 months, a little bit more than 5 months to go to the election.
Yep.
If it is Paul Ryan, it is pretty clear that it's going to be not only business as usual, which has been pretty appalling, notably that omnibus disaster, which they're teeing up to do all over again. And mark my words, all other things being equal, Paul Ryan will do it exactly the same way, even though President Trump has said he won't put up with it, come the end of the fiscal year in October. But here's the point, Matt. If the Congress, if the House at least, is actively engaged in the people's business, if it's doing serious oversight, if it's holding actual investigations that matter, if it's legislating in ways that make the difference between Republicans and Democrats as clear as it could possibly be, and animates people who want the sort of change that Donald Trump ran on and that I think Jim Jordan would offer, then that's the thing we ought to be doing, and not just, muddling along in a series of seemingly useless, brief periods of time in Washington, followed by long interludes where people are off, on the hustings or someplace else. This is too important a period. So much more to be done, and I think Jim Jordan is the guy to do it. And I was proud to be part of that letter, and appreciate you calling attention to it.
Yeah, so now the next thing I want to talk to you about is that President Trump faces a number of crises around the world, and this is a huge deal as we're following all of them. So the big one that looms is this meeting with Kim Jong Un, which now we're saying may or may not happen, and we don't know. But there's all sorts of different jostling heading into that. What do you think that President Trump needs to do moving into these discussions with the North Koreans about denuclearization?
Well, ironically, I think what he did yesterday is exactly what he needs to be doing, which is to say, hey, this thing may not happen. Completely, challenging and really supplanting this whole narrative that he's desperate to do it, and he's really yearning to get the Nobel Peace Prize, and that he's gonna do whatever it takes to make the meeting happen. I think signaling to Kim Jong Un that, hey, he's okay if it doesn't happen. It'd be a good thing for North Korea if it does, he says. It would be perhaps useful for the rest of the world if it happens, assuming it's really going to be productive. But I think the president, the art of the deal is on display at the moment. He's making it clear that he's not going to do it if it's not going to be, in fact, conducive to eliminating the threat from North Korea. And if he gets over there, and it turns out that it's not, he's going to walk away. Those are the critical signals to be sending, and I think they considerably improve the chances that something useful might come out of this exercise, about which I have misgivings, I have to say.
Mm-hmm. And so now another big thing is obviously President Trump withdrew from the Iran deal a couple weeks ago. Now, we've seen obviously increasing aggression from Iran, in the wake of that decision. What do you make of President Trump's decision to pull out of the Iran deal? What's happened since then? Where do things go from here on that front?
It remains to be seen, Matt, truthfully, but I think that what the president did was absolutely right, necessary, a corrective to one of the worst of President Obama's many, malfeasant actions, really. It's not just that it was a mistake, it was malfeasant to do this national security fraud of what I call the Obama bomb deal with Iran. But as important as anything else, Matt, was what Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said at the Heritage Foundation on Monday. I was pleased to be there to witness it. It was an extraordinarily important address about what would actually make it possible for us to have a relationship with Iran, namely one in which the people of Iran's interests as well as our own are served, not simply the interests of these mullahs who threaten both their own people and us, and continue to do so. And he laid out, as you know, Matt, 12 different requirements that are needed for there to be a deal worth the paper it's, well, in the case of the Obama bomb, basically not written on, but a real deal, an agreement, an understanding treaty, he suggested, that would eliminate the threat from the Iranian regime and really clear the way for its people to be liberated at last and integrated once again, as I think they desperately yearn to be, into the family of nations, as they say.
Mm-hmm. And now, one of the things and there's a number of other major things around the world, whether it be Israel with the embassy move and the Venezuela, quote unquote elections, even though they weren't really elections in Venezuela, but and other crises that the administration faces. But the thing that because we're tight on time here, that I want to zone in on next is this deep state effort by that continues to unravel by the FBI, Justice Department, and now we're learning potentially even the CIA to engage in an effort to spy on President Trump's campaign in 2016 and potentially other campaigns. We don't know yet. But the fact of the matter is that it's pretty remarkable, Frank. I think all the things that are coming out about this mole and the spies and the informants and so on and so forth, and it looks like the Obama administration ran a full-scale operation, right? An intelligence operation on an American citizen who happened to be eventually became the leading presidential candidate for the opposing political party and then won the election. I mean, they engaged in an operation. It was an op.
Yeah. I think the technical term for it is a counterintelligence operation specifically, and under its guise, I think what's increasingly apparent, Matt, is the weaponization of the FBI and the intelligence community and the Department of Justice for political purposes, to prevent Donald Trump's candidacy from amounting to anything, to help Hillary Clinton in a variety of ways, notably, of course, by not prosecuting her for her crimes. But beyond that, seemingly, putting in place surveillance of the campaign, whether it's wiretapping or whether it's informants, more than one, perhaps at least one, it seems, but engaging in interference with the political process of our country, though ostensibly for the purposes of establishing that the Russians weren't running influence operations on the basis of a fabrication. Let's face it, what Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC generated in the way of this dodgy dossier. There's so much here. And again, this is going back to your first question, Matt, why it seems to me it is imperative that we have new leadership in the Congress and that it be really rigorously engaging in getting to the bottom of what happened here and how to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Jim Jordan would be, I think, the right guy to help lead all of that.
Yeah, and Frank, we have about a minute or so left here, but the last thing I want to ask you about again on this front is the character who name keeps coming back up. In addition to Comey, and we've talked a lot about Comey in the past, but this new character, who keeps recurring and now appears to be at the front center of all this again is Brennan, the former CIA director. What do you make of all the different things that are starting to come out about Brennan and his potential involvement in all of this?
Well, very quickly, his increasingly shrill and over-the-top denunciations of the president and, other screeds in the various media outlets he employs, this speaks of a man who's desperate. To me, I think he sees his exposure as a political apparatchik who abused the Central Intelligence Agency and its powers is going to come to light, and I hope it will result in justice being done against him. I have to say, I'm a little worried that a gal that he has been so front and center supportive of is now the CIA director, Gina Haspel, because I have the feeling that her ties to him may complicate our getting to the bottom of what the agency was doing under Brennan in this weaponized form. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I could. This is a lot to unravel here and a lot more to come. Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy, thanks so much for joining us here on Breitbart News Daily.
Pleasure always. Thank you, man.